I paid $44.5 million for the franchise in 1987, and then later on in 2004 sold it for over $400 million.
He named an NBA franchise over dinner. Then he left for Phoenix with 3 kids, $300, and 9 suitcases.
We need something that represents a tough Chicago. He said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Bulls." And he said, "I like it. That's it. That's our name."
At 27, he was the youngest general manager in pro sports. Chicago was home. Then Phoenix called. A blank canvas.
We left Chicago with 3 little kids, 2, 4, and 6 years of age, $300 in my pocket, 9 suitcases, and jumped on a plane. 68, I saw a blank canvas, and it was an opportunity to paint your own portrait.
He didn't just take a job. He bet his family on a market almost nobody believed in yet. From expansion basketball in Phoenix to Olympic gold with Team USA, Beijing, London, Rio, the wins kept stacking.
We won the Olympics in Beijing in 08. We won in 12 in London. We won in 16 in Rio.
But that's not why this conversation exists. This isn't a story about box scores. It's about navigating change when the map is blank. How you decide, how you build, and how you live with being right just enough of the time.
If you're right 51% of the time, you're way ahead of the game.
This is Jerry Colangelo.
Some conversations were never meant to be recorded. This one was. Dick Schultz, University of Iowa basketball coach, ran the NCAA, and led the United States Olympic Committee. Kevin Cramton, author of Tuned, former CEO, who has led billion-dollar deals around the globe and credits Dick as his greatest mentor.
Sometimes life, you get out of tune.
If you keep your focus in the right place, and then life will become a true adventure for you.
In a world moving faster than ever, it's easy to lose rhythm. These conversations help you find it again.
The A and B students all end up working for the C students.
This is not a masterclass. This is not a playbook. It's just real talk from 2 men who have done it. Welcome to Tune Talks.
So, Jerry Colangelo, welcome to Tune Talks, where we talk about how to navigate the key challenges, changes, and sometimes chaos that we face in life. And you especially have had many chapters during your illustrious career of navigating things. And I think it would be really helpful, and Dick will kind of walk us through some of those key elements as to the change you took on. How did you navigate it? How did the decision process work? And what were the key enablers to allow you to be successful as you step through those various pivots as you walk through your life and your career in various elements of business and sports?
Well, Jerry, the first time I saw you is when I was coaching at Iowa and your senior year at Illinois. And in those days, you know, we didn't play every school in the Big Ten twice. We had a number of them we played one time and the rest of them 2 times a year, and then that would rotate. But we only had Illinois one time that year, and it was at Champaign, and I saw this very quick, lean guard that impressed me who was playing for Illinois, and they handled us pretty easily, as I remember. So, Jerry, you've had a terrific life, a lot of different things, challenges, up and down situations, and you've survived all of those and come out on top in every situation. So let's go back to your start as growing up in Chicago, and tell us about that and about your time at Illinois.
Sure. Seems like a long time ago, and it was, but very, very special and close to my heart is the fact that I came from the beginnings that I did, and that was a southern suburb of Chicago, Chicago Heights, the Italian section of town called Hungry Hill. I lived in a house that my immigrant grandfather built out of the remnants of 2 railroad boxcars and some additional lumber. And that's the only home I lived in until I left, which was during my college days. So it was there that I really did get my basic, who am I? I learned and just accepted the fact that life was about family, faith, hard work, commitment. We lived in a neighborhood where everyone's home was open to one another. And, in today's world, you can't look at a youngster cross-eyed without getting yourself in trouble. Back in those days, if you got out of line, a neighbor would give you a whack, and that was part of life. And so I think I learned an awful lot about life. Went through some family issues with a father, and so a mother who only went through the 4th grade, and coming out of that kind of circumstance, you understand appreciation. And I never thought ever, and I'm going way back, that it was me doing all these things. I knew God had a plan, but I didn't know a lot of detail. I just knew and felt it, because I was blessed early on with some athletic ability in basketball and baseball. And as you know, Coach, I had a lot of offers from major universities, and I actually went to Kansas to play with Wilt Chamberlain. I was recruited to be the outside shooter when they had none, and lockered next to him. Freshmen were ineligible to play back in the day, but I practiced every day with the varsity and would have been a starter in my sophomore year, except he made a decision to quit and sign with the Globetrotters. And this was in 1957-58 for $75,000 to wait 1 year to be eligible for the NBA draft. And when he did that, my gut and my instinct was, I'm going home. So I called Harry Combs, the coach at Illinois, who had tried to recruit me a year earlier. And I said, Coach, I'm homesick and I want to come back. And he wanted me. And so it was there that I met my wife of now 65 years, Joan, at the University of Illinois. She was a transfer from Michigan State, a Southern Illinois girl from Collinsville. And I know you would remember that a lot of good basketball people came from the southern part of the state, and Collinsville in particular had a great coach, Virgil Fletcher, who, he started a lot of things. For example, whenever a little boy was born, he'd show up at someone's house or at the hospital with a small basketball and throw it in the crib, and getting them started and indoctrinated early. But anyway, her family moved up to Chicago. She lived in Park Ridge during her growing up days of, I think, between 7 and 18 or 19. And she became acquainted with Young Life, which became a big part of our lives. She attended club in Park Ridge, Illinois in the mid-50s when it was just getting started. Young Life was about 7 to 10 years old at the time. And it was through her that my eyes were opened about faith. And I'm giving her credit for bringing me along. She was my anchor. And as a result of that introduction to Young Life, it became a lifelong part of our lives. Where here in Phoenix, our first group of people that we met were all Young Life people, and a couple that Joni had actually gone to camp with in Colorado. And so that was a beginning in Arizona regarding Young Life, which led to the board, national board, and the chairmanship, and spending an awful lot of time in that ministry. But that's not the only one, because our hearts, referring to Joni and mine, have been to support financially and otherwise the ministries that were important to us and to our community. So the early days of learning the ropes a little bit and understanding right and wrong and learning the hard way in certain cases and how to deal with adversity family-wise was a blessing for me, because it was all part of a preparation. And so when I graduated from the University of Illinois, I happened to have been a prospect in baseball also, by the way, as a left-handed pitcher. And there was a guy who pitched behind me at that time by the name of Jim Bouton, who went on to pitch for the Yankees. He won 20 games one year, won a couple of World Series games. He didn't last long, but he made it. We were very proud of him. My over-competitiveness in terms of wanting to win cost me an arm. I overpitched as a young kid, 17, starting a game in the county tournament, American Legion in Illinois, going 9 innings on Sunday, going 9 innings on Wednesday, going downstate to Mattoon, Illinois, where we played in the state tournament. And I pitched 3 consecutive days, 1 start and 2 reliefs, and then on to Crosley Field in Cincinnati for the Nationals. And my arm was dragging, but I started. We beat a team from Benton Harbor, Michigan, I believe, 9-4. And then I broke my hand, my left hand. It was a lefty, and never really recovered, because back then we didn't know too much about rehab. That was still to come, in terms of how people dealt with injuries. In fact, Bouton and I, after practices and games, would put hot water on our arms. It should have been ice. It should have been cold water. But you learn most things, later on. But I would say this. That background, that beginning, that experience for me was a preparation for the rest that took place after that. After graduation from Illinois, I was in private business with a friend of mine for 3 years. And I played AAU basketball and got paid to play games. $50 a game at that time was a lot of money when you have a young family. We were starting. We bought a house for $15,000 in Chicago Heights. I needed $500 for a down payment to get in the house, and I had to borrow that, but did it. And we made it work for 3 years. It was during that time that a gentleman by the name of Dick Klein, who was from Fort Madison, and I know that would ring a bell with you, Coach, Fort Madison. He was a Northwestern guy who played basketball and baseball. His best years were in the armed forces, playing at Great Lakes. And it was there he really developed this desire to do something in basketball. When I met him, he was in the incentive marketing business, and he offered me a job at twice the amount of money I was making for 3 years. And on a trip to call on 3 of his accounts in Cincinnati, Columbus, and Louisville, he told me about a dream. His dream was to bring pro basketball to Chicago. In those days, there were only 9 NBA teams. Chicago was void of a team. And so for the next 6 months, we went about trying to get some credibility, interest some investors, meeting with the commissioner of the NBA. We did all the groundwork, and we did it undercover. We didn't want it to be a public event, if you will, until it was time to announce. And we were able to do that. And so, I met people I never would have met in my life because of that experience. The top business people in the city of Chicago. By the way, the cost of the franchise was $1,250,000. How about that? And our payroll that first year was $180,000 payroll. So, but you start somewhere. Ticket prices were $2, $3, $4, $5, and anyway, after 6 months, we landed a franchise, and that was the birth of the Chicago Bulls. And the naming of the Bulls occurred over a dinner between Klein and myself. The family that owned the Blackhawks, the Wilt family, also owned the old Chicago Stadium. And when we met with them, they said, no, we don't really want you if you get a franchise because basketball will never make it in the city of Chicago. That was right out of the mouth of Arthur Wirtz. And so the only option we had was the Stockyards on the south side of Chicago. They had an arena. It wasn't anything to write home about. It seated about 10,000, and it needed a lot of repair. But that's where we played our first year with the Bulls. And by the way, that dinner I was referring to, Klein said to me, he says, we may have a team in 2 weeks when that meeting takes place. We don't even have a name. And I said to him, I've been thinking about that. Chicago has a certain image, a toughness image. We're playing at the Stockyards. That's where all the cows and bulls and everything else was slaughtered. We need something that represents a tough Chicago. He said, what are you talking about? And I said, Bulls. And he said, I like it. That's it. That's our name. That's how the Bulls were named. Now, today, companies would pay millions of dollars and go through every kind of thing possible to come up with a game plan. No, back in the day, your game plan was two people getting together and deciding what you wanted to do and do it. And so that's how I kind of developed a certain attitude about life, about whatever I was going to get involved in, I was going to give it all I had. If you're a competitor, you're a competitor. It doesn't matter whether it's bouncing balls or whatever in life. And I think all of those experiences helped me considerably. And so we were born. The Bulls were born, the first expansion team of the modern era. And I was a young guy, which was about to be a growth industry, because as soon as we were announced, the NBA started adding franchises almost every year, because the following year, Seattle and San Diego were added. Seattle is now in Oklahoma City, through a move and a sale. San Diego went to Houston. And so the following year, Milwaukee and Phoenix were in. And here I was, 27 years old. There weren't many people with experience in the NBA. The organizations were very small. And my role in Chicago was just about everything in terms of scouting, marketing, PR. You do what you had to do that particular day. But it was great experience. I had no idea just how valuable it would all be, because it led to me being a candidate at both Milwaukee and Phoenix in 1968. Chicago was born in 66, the Bulls. And in 68, Phoenix and Milwaukee were added, and I had two opportunities to go to either place as a GM, and I chose Phoenix. And at that time, I was the youngest GM in pro sports. We left Chicago with three little kids, 2, 4, and 6 years of age, $300 in my pocket, 9 suitcases, and jumped on a plane and in one way never looked back. Of course, I look back to Chicago. That's always been home. But it was that kind of a willingness to just plunge and go for it. And it turned out to be a tremendous, tremendous opportunity for me. We arrived here in March of '68. We've been here ever since in the city of Phoenix. I've been a part of the entire growth of the city, the state, involved in just about everything that were to take place. And I didn't know how much of a platform I was creating. But it was there, and it was important to do things in the appropriate way. And by the time we got to Phoenix, I was pretty much, I knew who I was as a Christian, and I knew what was expected of me. And so I took it very, very seriously, that particular platform, and got involved in every way. In fact, in my first press conference, I said to the
Jerry, that the background that you had with the Bulls and in Chicago was such a valuable asset for you, because at that time, when you made the move to Phoenix, you probably had no idea of how great a potential that was going to be and how big an influence you were going to have on the city. And it ended up just being unbelievable. So I think a lot of people would love to know about your Phoenix situation and all the situations that you came up with and developed there with Major League Baseball and the Suns, and now with a large development group, and all that early training you had really gave you the background and experience you needed, plus your faith to be effective in Phoenix.
Well, thank you. And that's actually right on. Again, back in '68, when I came here, I saw it was a Wild West in terms of Phoenix. You know, back in the day, there were 700,000 people in the valley. Today, there's over 5 million in the valley. But back in '68, I saw a blank canvas, and it was an opportunity to paint your own portrait. That's what really came to my mind. And so you didn't have to be a blue blood. You didn't have to come from that kind of stock to make something of yourself and make an impact. And so that's what living in America has done for so many people. And I was a product of those opportunities, and I kind of saw it, and I tried to maximize it as best I could. Some people would say, well, what was your plan when you got here? My plan was basically to do the very best I could do, build the very best team I could, be a good participant in the city. And what took place is that I was being called on to do a lot more than run a basketball team back then. But it was all part of who I was. I just knew in my heart of hearts that that's what was expected of someone. I was a GM at that time in 1968, and in '87 was able to put a group together to buy the team. Now, everything's relative. I told you about the price of the franchise in Chicago, $1,250,000 in '66. Phoenix, $2 million in '68. And I had a lot of autonomy because I had absentee ownership. And that helped me grow because I was learning in the trenches. That's the best place to make your mistakes and learn from them and go on. We built a good organization. I paid $44.5 million for the franchise in 1987. And then later on in 2004, sold it for over $400 million. So, again, very blessed to have the opportunity. And at the time, you know, you build relationships. I spend, as you know, Coach, that I'm very involved with the Grand Canyon University here in Phoenix. And I tell the students in the business school that they named in my honor, you know, life is relational. It's about learning to look at people, look them in the eye, shake hands, verbalize. It's not with a computer. That's really life. And I try to drill that into the young people when I have the opportunity to speak with them. And never be afraid to fail. You were a competitor as an athlete, as a coach. Well, that's how we are. It's like you're not afraid to take the last shot. You're not afraid to do those things because you've been drilled that way. Well, that's really my experience in the business world in Phoenix. When someone would say to me, Jerry, that's not possible, I would probably respond pretty quickly, yes, it is possible, and we're going to show you how we can get it done. And then go ahead and get it done. And so one step at a time, but you have to be committed to get things done. Why did all these things happen to me? That's because God had the plan for my life. It wasn't me on my merits making all these things happen. I was kind of following his lead as best I could. Did I make some mistakes? Absolutely. I don't know anyone who's gone through life without blemishes. And so I just feel very blessed that I was given the opportunity. And again, I said earlier, my wife was my anchor. She's the one who kept me on the straight and narrow. She's the one who, if she thought I was out of line just a hair, she would have something to tell me. And a marriage that's lasted 65 years is the proof of the pudding.
Jerry, how much were you involved in bringing the Major League Baseball to Phoenix? You had a big part after it got there, but how did that take place?
Well, in 1993, the Suns played the Bulls in the NBA Finals. We had Barkley, along with Marley and Tom Chambers and Kevin Johnson, and we had a good team. The Bulls had Scottie Pippen and a guy named Michael Jordan, and we had the best record in the league from day one in that season. Our first year in our new building that we built downtown. It was a terrific year. Paul Westphal was a rookie coach, and we get to the finals. We have them down. We lose the first two games in Phoenix with a home court advantage. We lose 2. We go to Chicago and win 2 out of 3, and then get beat in Game 6 back in Phoenix when John Paxton, hit a jumper at the buzzer to beat us. It was crushing. It was crushing. So the bottom line is, I spent 40 plus years in the NBA, never won an NBA championship, but we had the 4th best record in the history of the league during that 40 years. We had really good teams, but we were always just a hair short, always a hair short. So we had a big celebration downtown. 300,000 people showed up to honor the Suns after losing in the finals. And right afterwards, a member of the Board of Supervisors, County Board of Supervisors, and Joe Garagiola Jr., you would remember his father, Joe Garagiola Sr., who was a major league player, catcher, entertainer, TV guy in terms of a host, and a tremendous person who's no longer with us. But Joe Jr. and the County Board of Supervisor individual came to see me and said, we think we're ready for baseball in this community, and we believe you're the only guy who can make it happen. And my immediate response was, my plate is full. I don't know. I just don't have the time, blah, blah, blah. But they got to me a little bit. And I did remember as a kid, back in the old neighborhood in Chicago Heights, listening, this is before TV, listening to the games on radio. And you would dream about pitching in Wrigley Field or Crosley Field or Ebbets Field or whatever. I was a National League guy. So being a Cub fan, I was very familiar with the National League. So the more I thought about it, I thought about the impact it would have on families. grandfathers taking their grandkids to games, and how much baseball back in the day, and I'm talking about growing up in the 40s and 50s, was a big part of everyone's life, including my wife. When she was still in Southern Illinois, their family would sit out on the porch listening to St. Louis Cardinal games. So they were Cardinal fans in the southern part of the state. And I made a decision after reading a book called Lords of the Realm, written by a guy named John Hellier for the Wall Street Journal, a history of collective bargaining in baseball. And after reading the book, it was apparent to me baseball was in trouble at the moment because of the lack of negotiating skills on the part of ownership. The union just kind of beat them to death, and they were in control. But I sensed there was something else happening, and I met with the head of the players union in my offices and learned a great deal. I read the book that I mentioned, spoke to some people in baseball that I knew, like George Steinbrenner, who at the time was the owner of the New York Yankees, Jerry Reinsdorf, who was with the owner of the White Sox, 2 or 3 others, and they encouraged me. They said, go for it, and we'll back you, we'll support you. So made a decision for the community that we were going to bring Major League Baseball, but we had to build a stadium. So that was a big process. Bottom line is, 93 was the year that I referred to the finals against the Bulls. 95, we announced we were going for it. A year later, we were awarded a franchise. We had to build a stadium, which we did, and our first season was in 98. In our first year, we were a typical expansion team. After that first year, made a decision, we're going to try and win now and not wait for, things to organically take place. We went out and got some players. I signed Randy Johnson, one of the great all-time left-handed pitchers in the history of the game. Brought in Curt Schilling, Luis Gonzalez, Matt Williams, Jay Bell. I can go on and on. Well, in our 4th year, we won the World Series, which was it was the fastest ever in the history of the game. And I remember in the 9th inning of the 7th game in front of our fans, we had the bases loaded, 1 out, and Gonzalez at the plate. We're down. The score is now tied. And I'm thinking to myself, Lord, you have a funny sense of humor. I worked my whole life to win an NBA championship, and it didn't happen. And here we are in our 4th year in baseball, and we're about to do it. And then he hit a little blooper, and the winning run came in, and we were world champs. An incredible, incredible story.
Well, that bringing that franchise there and what you did with the Suns gave you, I think, the license that you needed to do the other things that you wanted to do, especially in the city of Phoenix, and now with your investment company, which has been so effective and so successful. Why don't you tell us about how you made that transition from being a sports icon to a top developer?
Well, again, life is relational, as I said earlier. You meet a lot of people, you develop relationships, and early on, I met a couple of guys who were turned out to be 40-year partners of mine, David Eaton and Mel Schultz, both strong Christian guys, both in real estate. They became partners of mine in the sports teams, and vice versa. I became involved in the real estate world. And eventually, when I left downtown Phoenix in terms of the Suns and the Diamondbacks, I moved over into the real estate offices with my partners. And we've been involved in two of the largest transactions ever in the state of Arizona. One was the State Farm location at Tempe Town Lake. As people fly into Phoenix, you look at the campus of State Farm. That was just under $1 billion acquisition. Now, how do you do things like that? You raise equity, you raise money. How do you raise that money? Through the relationships you have built over the years. And when you develop those relationships and you have mutual interests and there's trust involved in terms of what we were proposing, and then people make decisions as to whether they want to join in. We also did an amazing thing as I look back on it. Back 25 years ago, we bought some desert in Buckeye. Buckeye is about 40 miles west of Phoenix. And people close to me said, "What are you, crazy? Why would you buy that land? 34,000 acres of desert?" And my response was, it's not if, it's only when this market, as it continues to grow, moves westward toward the coast and overcomes the White Tank Mountains, which is out that way. And here's all that desert. Okay. Well, about 2 years ago, we sold, for the most part, we're still involved in the deal to some degree, but we sold to the largest master plan developer in the country, the Howard Hughes Corporation. They have master plan communities in Texas and Nevada and on the East Coast. We made a connection. We had a negotiation, and we sold our interests for over $600 million to Howard Hughes Corporation. And today, that is up and going. We had our grand opening a couple of weeks ago. Model homes are up, infrastructure's in place, and it's a 40-year build-out, which will be a city of 300,000 people. 300,000 people, 100,000 homes with all the bells and whistles. Now, that's not for me. That's maybe not even for my kids. It's for my grandkids and it's a legacy kind of an investment and program. So, if you're going to do things, you might as well do big things, because that's where the greatest return is.
We got to have Jerry talk about USA basketball, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, your real estate business was overwhelming, but I can recall I was at the NCAA then, and we had the U.S. had, from the Dream Team on, had dominated the Olympic basketball, and then all of a sudden we weren't getting the top players anymore, and we started finishing second and third. And I can remember visiting with you at Indianapolis over the weekend of a Final Four, and you mentioned to me that Stein had talked to you about running USA basketball, and I really encourage you to do that, because you were about the only person that I knew of and that he knew of that would have the relationship with the top players and the credibility to get them involved again. And what you did with USA basketball was absolutely amazing. And maybe you can give us the story of that and how that all worked out.
Absolutely. Well, 2004 was an interesting year for me. I sold the Suns' interest for personal reasons, financial planning for family, etc. I stepped down in the baseball world from the Diamondbacks. I had prostate cancer and had to go through a major decision and surgery. Did that. I was home recuperating when David Stern called me. The USA team had finished third in Greece the prior year, and I'm an instinctive guy. I think you know that because you've gotten to know me. And Stern said, "Would you take over USA basketball?" And I said, "Sure." Yeah, but I have a couple of provisos here. He said, "What are they?" I said, "Number one, full autonomy. I'll make the decisions. I'll pick the coaches. I'll pick the players." He says, "Done. What's number two?" I said, "I don't want to hear about a budget." He didn't like that one. And then I said, "David, don't worry about it. I'm going to do it my way. I'll raise the money anyway in terms of sponsorships." And that's exactly what happened. They had a $9 million budget the prior year. I quadrupled the revenues in one off season before we even played the next Olympics. That was through relationships, going back to some things I said earlier. So I had a plan. The plan was this. First of all, the recognition that we had lost our status in the world basketball community. We were frowned upon because we didn't show respect to them. And the only way you earn back respect is to do what I just said. You show them respect, and eventually it'll come back home. And so we did. And I had another plan, which was to meet with each player eyeball to eyeball. And basically, I would say the following. You know me. You know what I stand for. I took this on because I care. I care about being an American. I'm a basketball guy. I really am upset about how we're looked upon around the world today. And here's what we're going to do. And if you want to be part of this, we're going to make it happen. If you can't do A, B, and C, then you're out. I will end up with 12 players who are going to buy in to this philosophy. I got total buy-in is what happened. And we went on our journey. Well, as I think back on it now, we won the Olympics in Beijing in 2008. We won in 12 in London. We won in 16 in Rio. And then 21. The 20 Olympics were moved to 21 because of COVID. And it was a weird experience. We played in front of no one. There were no fans in the building in Tokyo. But we got through it and we won. So we won four medals. We actually won some world championships along the way too. But it was a great, great experience for me. I loved every minute of it. But it was time. You know, we all get to an age where it's time to pass the baton, if you will. And after the 21 Olympics and another win, I stepped down. And they are continuing with the winning. So I think we put things back on track. And, you know, I think about my college experience. I think about the NBA experience all those years, the baseball experience, USA basketball experience. I've been very blessed to have those opportunities and blessed to have had the success that we've had.
How challenging was it to get Mike Krzyzewski to be coach?
For Coach K. Right. I had two picks in advance. One was Popovich out of the NBA, and out of the college ranks, it was Coach K. But one thing I did, Dick, and I know you'll appreciate this, I called a meeting of all the former coaches who coached from Pete Newell on back in 1960 of the Olympic coaches, and I had a number of NBA legends who had participated in the Olympics, like Jerry West and Michael Jordan, and so on and so forth. I had about 40 people at an event in Chicago, and of course I would hold it at the Italian American Sports Hall of Fame, just to add a little flavor to it, and some good food. And we spent a day talking about the status of USA basketball. I wanted each of them to give their opinions. I wanted to hear their voices. They all knew ultimately I was going to make the final decision, but I wanted all the input from all the right people. So we got to we talked about the players position by position. We ranked players, ultimately who would you want on this team, etc. Coaches. Again, I said in advance, I had Coach K as the college guy, and I had Popovich as the pro coach that would be the finalists. Well, we went through, I put names of college coaches, maybe 10 of them, up on a board. And of course, the one that came out on top was Coach K. But here was the great story behind that. Dean Smith, who was a former Olympic coach, champion, he spoke and he said, there's only one college coach up there who could get that job done because everyone respects him, and that's Coach K. This was his biggest rival. I mean, but he put all that aside, and he support. To me, that was a great moment, a memory for me. And then on the pro side, Popovich was all by himself, in terms of the voting, etc. So it was those two. I had a phone conversation with Pop, and it was okay. I had a conversation with Coach K, and he almost jumped through the phone. He was so excited. We agreed to meet, and after we had dinner, it was pretty evident to me he was my guy. And that's how the selection took place.
Well, it was just like a lot of things you do. You touch base with all the details and you get everything lined up, and then you make the right decision, which is unusual for a lot of people, but with you, it's been effective. There's one thing that you and I have in common. Well, I'm 10 years older than you are, so my wedding anniversary with my wife was 75 years and 10 months, and she passed away early this year. But she had the same impact on my life that your wife had in your life. She kept me on the narrow path with the Lord whenever I had an opportunity to move.
And I think that's a blessing to have that kind of a relationship with a spouse. And it's rare today.
It really is. And as you were going through your life, and I've done this before, there's so many similarities. We both had a number of different jobs and work situations. And when I finally retired from the Olympics and started doing consulting work with the CEO Forum, it finally came to me that all those other things I had done were just preparing me for the ability to be able to counsel about 60 top CEOs in the U.S. and start a similar program in China and Hong Kong and Singapore and so forth. That the Lord had a plan, and for a good part of my life, I wasn't aware of it. But when I finally woke up to it, it was very clear that He was in control. Well, with that said, you and I have a special interest, and that's what was started as the Legends of the Hardwood Breakfast. And I can recall going to the Final Four, and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes would have a breakfast, and there'd be about 50 people there. Athletes in Action would have a breakfast, and there might be 50 or 75 people there. And between those two organizations and your involvement and my involvement, we came up with one breakfast. And that has just proved to be fantastic. So I'd like to have your thoughts about that.
Yeah, that's been a great experience for me personally, and that involvement with Athletes in Action and the whole organization, what they stand for, their campus in Ohio, the impact they're making on players and coaches around the world is amazing. So the forum of having a major breakfast at the Final Four is a great opportunity to have people hear the gospel, hear from athletes and coaches who are Christians and have something to say about their journeys. And it's been so rewarding to me just to have the relationship with organizations like that. And I think the impact, Dick, has been amazing. Wherever the Final Four is, it's a big highlight of the weekend. That breakfast, and we've had a lot of players. I remember thinking of Stephen Curry, and his family. His dad, a former NBA player, his brother, himself, they were all in Detroit for the Final Four. I think it was the Final Four. It had to be. And they were all our guests at a small little meeting we had before the breakfast. But we've seen so many great individuals go through our programs and the awards that we give to encourage young people. You know, you talk about the community people who show up for the breakfast, and they hear these athletes talk not much about themselves. They talk about their faith. They talk about what really is important to them in their lives. I think there's a great impact being made in each city where the Final Four is held because of it.
You know, it's really interesting, the draw that it has, because the breakfast will draw anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 or 3,000, depending on the size of the facility available to host it, and it's always sold out and packed. And the development of that breakfast, I think, is just one of the special ministries that's come along to really encourage people who have a big sports background.
Well, you know, we're talking about my life. Your life has not been void of a lot of things that you were able to accomplish, starting from where you started, and the impact you've made on so many people, including me. And I'm just glad we beat you when we played you in Champaign-Urbana back then in that one game you talked about earlier.
Yeah. Well, you know, Larry, pardon me, Jerry, I have really enjoyed the time I've spent with you. And the last couple of years, I haven't been able to get together with you in Phoenix, but Lord will, for my health staying there, I plan to maybe spend a week in Phoenix sometime in February probably. And if I do, I'll let you know, and want to come to your office and have that annual visit that we used to have all the time.
Hey, Jerry, one question. I know that you're involved with young people, and one of the themes that we've seen in the several podcasts that we've done is because of the tremendous amount of change and that you're seeing in today's society, including technology, be it with artificial intelligence. One of the questions we continue to get from young people, and now even mid-career people, is how do I equip myself for the world that's coming? What should I be doing? And you have a business school named after you over at Grand Canyon. What is the message that you're trying to spread as to how to equip people? Because it's coming, the change is coming, and you've seen it in your life, Dick has, in his. So how are you helping to equip young people as they go forward into this world of change?
Well, one, you need to be a model yourself so that people can look to you with hopefully respect and the desire to do things the appropriate way. My experience with GCU, which is a Christian school, is that we've created an atmosphere on a campus, contained campus, where families, parents can feel very comfortable in dropping off their kids to go to school. There's a chapel service every Monday on the campus, It's not mandatory. There are some chapel services around the country mandatory to attend, not at GCU, and it's always sold out in our arena. There's 7,000 plus every Monday. We create a situation where it's what is expected of them. We want to make it so appealing to them, the young people, that they, by the time they're gone from the university, they're pretty well entrenched for the most part in terms of their faith and doing things the right way. So you can't change the world. You can change a small piece of it in what you're doing and what involvement you have. Like in my case, wherever I've been, I try to serve a role in that purpose is to do it the right way, to encourage young people that if things could happen for me the way they have happened for me, encourage them. I don't know if I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. You can't be afraid to fail. You have to be willing to take risk, calculated risk. You may slip and fall. You need to be the last one up. Get up and go for it. Don't be intimidated. You can get the job done. Believe in yourself. If you have a strong faith, you know that the Lord is alongside you and helping you do the right thing, step by step. So by encouraging young people in their faith, encouraging them philosophically to be willing to make investment. You don't win all the time, but just win more than you lose. There was a Buzzy Bavasi, was a old baseball guy with the Dodgers, general manager, and he once said, and it stuck in my mind, and always has. He said, in player personnel, if you're right 51% of the time, you're way ahead of the game, because there's so much risk involved. When you select players to play college ball, not all of them turn out to be what you thought they were going to be, and some are better than you might have thought. Well, the same is true on a pro level. Well, as it relates to interchanging thoughts and ideas and communicating with young people, you maintain a positive approach to everything. Yeah, this may be a difficult task. Stick to it. You can get it done. You got to believe in yourself. So, I don't know. There's no one direct answer. It's a combination of a lot of things.
Harry, as kind of a last 2 or 3 minutes, is there anything that you would like to share of your vast world of experiences, whether it's professional or family life or spiritual life, that you'd like to share with people before we end the
Sure. We have a large family. And I remind my wife, it all started with the two of us. We have 4 children. We have 10 grandchildren. We have soon to be 9 great children. And then you add the spouses, and it's a big group. And so, where is my interest today? It's in their lives. And we had a family meeting yesterday, and yeah, we could talk about a lot of things, business and finances and so on and so forth. But our message, my wife and my message to our family members, is more about their faith, more about the one thing we want for them. Our plan is to be in heaven, God willing. We want them to be alongside us in heaven, God willing. So by emphasizing to our family members, and I'm talking now about our grandkids, they get it, they understand it, how important this is and how we want to, in terms of a legacy, here's who we are, here's what we believe in, this is what we would hope you would follow. And so there's nothing more important than that. Forget all the gold medals, forget all the championships and all the individual things. There's nothing more important than your family and seeing that they're going to have a life up in heaven.
So, Jerry, that's the great finishing comments, and we'll let you know when this is ready to go up on YouTube. And we just thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to talk with us today.
Yes, thanks, Jerry.
Well, I appreciate it, and stay healthy.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right. Thanks, Jerry.
Take care. Bye-bye.